and then she can jump in. So we do the, have you started the recording, Michelle? Okay, so call to order. So let's just do a roll call of everybody that's here. It's Capital Budget Committee meeting, November 17th, 2025. And present? Who's present? Anybody?
Yeah, Ralph Domitzer here.
Chris Fleisch, present.
Rob Casemeyer here.
And Susan Franklin, present. Okay, the first thing on the agenda was Kathy, but we're gonna skip to you, Michelle. With the update on the 10-year capital plan.
Yep. So we have reached back out to all the different departments. We've asked several to give us kind of their wish list in future years, but this year we let them know things are very tight. We need to make sure that we have a very like concise plan from all of them. I can tell you Harbor's pushed off. Some DPW items have pushed off. The 10-year capital plan that's in the OneDrive now reflects those items. I am meeting with the schools tomorrow morning at 11 to go through some capital items there as well. Everyone understands that all budgets are tight this year, so that we have to, make the best of a not so great situation. And we have to get the things done that are crucial, but not necessarily unnecessary for this year. So
is there any reason to actually look at the plan or just
I mean, we can.
in case anybody has any questions?
Sure. Let me pull it up. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay, great.
Okay,
Got it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, police stays consistent. But if you, I don't know what's happening here to my computer. Hang on 1 second. Sorry. If you go down to FY27, the current requests that we have are now equal to the $2.5 million, down from $4 million that we had last week, before we took some cuts to it. The big ticket items that have been moved, like I said, the harbor master has removed her building. You'll see significant savings in the IT line items, whereas we were talking originally about that SoftWrite financial management solution. Ron also agreed this is not something that we can achieve this year. We're going to need a lot of buy-in from a lot of different departments. So that has moved out. The camera surveillance upgrades has also moved out. And as far as the building access security, that's moved out. He also indicated that on the school side, we have some items in here that he believes will also move once the school committee meets with the schools to review their list. One of the things he highlighted was the Chromebook lease that was in there for FY27. He said that's done. There's no need for.
I'm on a town capital budget committee meeting, so can I call you back later? That's all right, I'll call you later.
Did that just come out altogether? I don't see where it went.
Yep, so that's gone. He said the Chromebook books, as of right now, they have filled their obligation. And when they start looking at new leases, they'll populate in the future years. But as of right now, he doesn't have a number, so that's going to stay.
So are there Chromebooks that are in use, but it's just that the lease payments are done?
I'm sorry,
Or are we
I
not
can't hear
using
you.
them anymore?
Susan, can you repeat yourself? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time
Oh,
hearing you.
I said, do we have Chromebooks in possession and use, but we just don't have an active lease payment?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're going into like year 4 and 5 on them instead of the 3 years that we normally turn them over.
That's correct.
Okay.
I heard today from one of the school committee members, that when they talked about, refurnishing an entire wing, which
Mhm.
is, let's see if that's in here still. Um, where is it? So the window shade replacement and repair at all schools, that is something that'll likely get pushed out to future years. And there's something else in here that I may have already pushed out.
Was it replace the office furniture at the Dare Hill and the counseling office and conference room?
Yes, that's it. Where is that line item?
It's like line 124.
Okay, yep, so I've already pushed that out. So I mean, just with some of these revisions, we've saved probably $1.6 million over the last plan.
Mhm.
And there'll be even further adjustments as I hear back from everybody else. So as of right now, the number is 2.57.
You didn't happen to notice what it did in the next year?
I'm sorry,
The
Susan?
the swing in the next fiscal year by moving them? Did you happen to notice?
Yep. So that we're gonna have to take another look at, but that is primarily driven, I believe, by a roof project, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see.
The roof, yeah, the Dare Hill roof is in there. But so is the ladder truck, and those are probably the two big ones.
Yeah. The ladder truck, I mean, we're gonna have to have, like I said, yeah, last week, we're gonna have to have more discussions around that ladder truck.
Okay. All right, well, more digestible. Does anybody have any comments? Are we the only two on the call? So Michelle, one of the things that we're gonna talk about a little bit later, but I might as well bring it up now, is both Ralph and I were chatting over the weekend about what we looked at some other people's capital plans and programs that we could online. And we noticed that a lot of towns really just look at a 5-year horizon. And then they have like a long-term view, but it's not really part of the way they evaluate in the current periods. They don't look out 10 years. It's out there and they know it's out there. But I think they make their decisions more based on the 5-year cycle. Ralph, what do you have anything to say about that? Comment on it?
Turn my audio on here. Yeah, I think that's what I saw too, that usually relatively good 5-year plans are shown, and they're used as a way to try to understand what is coming down the pike and what you can move out and what you don't have to move out. In other words, they were helpful in sort of analyzing even the current year. They have a 5-year plan allows you a lot of options as to what can be done, much as Michelle is now doing, which is taking a look at these items that could move out a year or two. So it's really helpful to have the 5-year for sure. And certainly when we deliberate, it's best for us to have a 5-year look out if we can get one. So
Yeah, and I think that we've always sort of done that anyways. We do the 10 more to keep it on the radar. But I really think when we're thinking about the projects that are in front of us, we're really looking more at a 5-year window.
Right.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So we were just talking about the 10-year plan, and Michelle went back to the departments and they revisited a lot of the items that were in the bucket for this year.
Mhm.
And the number now, having pushed some things out, is 2,570,000. That's down from like 5 and what, Michelle? 5 million
It's
and
down from, I think it was like 4.8.
4.8.
Wow. Did the fire department keep the pumper truck on for? Yes, okay.
They did.
Just noting that you're here now, Kathy. Just 1 second. Okay. All right then. We skipped you at first, Kathy, so we're back.
Okay. We're ready for the
We're ready
Public
to
Safety
have our
Facilities
update.
Working Group update.
Mm-hmm.
So we met this morning. We met for a couple hours this morning, actually. It was a good meeting. We talked a little bit about the communications plan. We posted the mission statement on Facebook and a committee page on the web last week. This week, we have an article called What Happens at a Modern Police Station? And it's pretty brief, and it will have a link to a more expansive kind of fact sheet of the different things that happen, such as, evidence processing and storage, et cetera. So we're working on that. We're also working on putting together some dates for more Elm Street tours, some community forums, as well as going to some community events like basketball games, possibly the baseball softball awards night, which I think is in February, the rec fair, et cetera. So we're putting all that together. And then we talked a little bit about kind of the next thing we want to get out there, and we want to talk a little bit to the folks, to the community about emergency response times, and talk a little bit about how 135 King could impact response times, what the study tells us, and what are the current mitigations for the fact that we have the train tracks running through, and how the emergency services kind of mitigate that. There were quite a few people at the meeting who were surprised because they did not know that all of the fire staff were EMTs. And they also did not know that whenever there's an emergency call, that the police, the fire, and the ambulance all arrive. So there's a lot of information that people don't know. We feel there's a lot of chatter in the community about emergency response times. And so what we want to do is kind of just get the facts out so that when people are giving us their input, they have some facts in front of them. And then, it's up to the community to tell us like how important this is or not to them based on all the facts. Any questions on the communications piece of it? Okay. We talked a little bit, I gave them the feedback from this group from last week. So we talked a little bit about the Greenfield site. We, discussed the fact that other sites were looked at, Crocker Lane, the old nursery site, and the fact that there aren't any other Greenfield sites available unless we were to take property by eminent domain. And the thought was that that would be a very long and very expensive process that the town probably doesn't have appetite for. We then also talked about potentially building Elm Street higher. And there are a lot of issues with that. Most of a few of the people on the committee who have some construction background, they indicated that the likelihood is that a building built in 1962 would not really have the foundation to hold another. It wouldn't be able to hold another floor, and that what you would likely need to do is tear the building down and rebuild it. But we do want to get an actual answer for this group, so we are going to reach out to the architect and get their opinion as to what it would take to put a second floor in Elm Street. The other issue that worried the working group is that if we were to stay at Elm Street and completely rehab it, we would need to somehow build or access a temporary detention center, and relocate all the fire equipment and things. So it would be quite complicated in terms of what we would do temporarily while while Elm Street was being rebuilt. But they're going to take a look and see with the architect what they think and what it would take to put another floor on 62 and 44 Elm Street. And then after that, we did a real deep dive into the 135 King Street plans. So we went kind of room by room. And it was a really great way for the rest of the working group, as well as myself, to get some insights into more about police programming, and what they need the rooms for and what the rooms do, et cetera, as well as starting to give us some initial ideas of where there might be cost savings. So I think our next meeting is December 9th. And Glenn is coordinating to get the architects and the OPM at that meeting, so we can start chatting to them about, potential savings and what we could do at 135 King Street to kind of reduce that footprint and reduce that costs. There was some concern from the working group that we're having community forums to get feedback in January and February, but we're already talking about what we want to do with the buildings. But the working group really feels like we don't want to, there's been a lot of time spent already. And so we want to do those things in parallel versus sequentially and just make it an iterative process so that so that we're just cognizant of time. We don't spend too much time doing this, because as we know, the longer we wait, the higher the construction costs get. I think that was it. Comments, questions, concerns?
No, I don't have any comments. Anyone else?
Couldn't hear you, Susan.
I would only jump in and say, Kathy, you got to be really careful about making this a communications exercise. People want to know that, in fact, what you've done has explored all the potential options, and you've heard that from me before. And communication is not the issue. It's having the right solution that people agree is the right solution, rather than communicating about it. I fully understand what you're saying about the time it takes from a fire engine to go from the garage to the destination. Those are the numbers you've gotten are based on something which has a variable in it, as I said, and I'm not convinced that anyone really knows what that variable is. So you have to be really careful about things being facts when they're not quite facts. So broadly, I still think it is not clear that, in fact, a very expensive site, basically because the site itself is so difficult and a building that is so difficult to do anything with, is better than something else. So, and that's why a lot of people will feel. So I know you've done a lot, and I know they're trying to think about other ideas, but it has to be a very sincere attempt to find other possibilities and evaluate them carefully. So.
Yeah.
I agree with Ralph. I think that it's going to be their initial impression, or their initial feedback is, well, we've looked at all kinds of alternatives. We've done them in a lot of detail, and we've considered that. And I think that I don't think that'll fly with the town. I think they'll have to look at it separately and try to figure out, and I think it's going to be very difficult to take out, $20 million worth of expense, or 15, or even 5, with just without a major difference in the way that they've approached it. So,
I mean, in reality, there has been a lot of diligence done around the site and trying to find a site. So we could do all that diligence again, but I'm not sure what that's going to get us necessarily, other than more time spent and more cost spent. And I'm not sure why you think that the diligence around the site that was previously done was, I mean, do you think it was substandard, or, did you think there wasn't enough expertise there? I mean, a lot of people have put some time and smarts into this. So I'm struggling here to be able to tell the working group what the problem is you have with the fact that they've already done that work and what the problem with that was.
Well, it's
Well,
always hard to go back on these things, but I think we can agree that probably what we slipped on a little bit the first round was, well, we did buy the building. We thought it was a good opportunity, and we found out a lot about it that we did not expect. But then the other thing was, there was a lot of talk about what was going to happen with public safety without talking about Elm Street in conjunction with King Street. And that, I think that when it finally did open up to being included in the conversation, it got to be a much more complicated discussion. But I agree with you. They've done a lot to find a piece of property. Unfortunately, we just don't really have it. We don't have a piece of property.
I think that they are consistent with that, Susan. I think that they're expanding it to the Elm Street site and trying to figure out how they can use them both in conjunction is
Mhm.
an excellent approach. And I think that
Oh, yeah.
if they don't realistically look at it and they just say, well,
Mhm.
Elm Street is 60 years old, just needs to be torn down, I don't think that's going to fly with the town.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I'm agreeing with you. Bringing it into
Right.
the conversation was an important step that we did make, but we made it, a little bit later in the game than we probably should have. But there are probably some issues with that particular building and
Sure.
that are going to need to be addressed. And we all know them. We all know a lot of them because we've all been to the building. Doesn't mean they're not gonna, they said that they were going to look at it further, and that's great. But I think we all do have to realize the reality potentially is that we have no other options than the ones that are in front of us. And the third option would be to do nothing, which we really can't do in terms of public safety because we're already not meeting code in our police operations. So one way or the other, something's going to get done. It's just a question of to what degree.
Right.
What's the town's appetite? To what degree?
Right.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
So originally I had the long range planning on there, but our meeting is until Thursday of this week, so I don't really have anything to update you on today. So from here, we're going to jump into the operational side of the Capital Budget Committee. So I sent out to everybody the sort of governing documents that are on our website. But in conjunction with that, I also sent you two documents from two other towns, so we can kind of see if there are things that they are doing that we think we need to include or things that we need to clarify. There is a little bit of some dated stuff in our current document. Like it doesn't talk anything about other stabilization funds other than the capital stabilization fund. So anyways, we could go line by line or we can just talk about it generally. Did anyone have any particular comments when they looked at that governing document that I believe on the OneDrive is just called, let me go back to it.
Is it the overview document?
Yes, it's the overview. Yep.
Yeah, overview,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, right.
That was exactly my question.
Yeah, so it's from 2017, so I'm sure there's probably things about it that need to be updated. A couple of things popped up for me when I read it. But before I just have a soliloquy here, did anybody else see anything about the document or have any questions about what it how it outlines our mission as a committee?
One of the things that came to me as I was reading it was at the last session, I sort of took from a week ago, in other words, that our objective was we didn't have to know all the details of of every project and so on. We just had to really make sure that the costs were accurately put together as much as we could, and whether those costs conform to our 10-year plan or whatever was in there. And this description, on the other hand, really seemed to say to me, you got to know what's in there, and in lots of detail. And so I'd ask for a little clarification on that.
I'm not sure from what we talked about last week. Last week, I think when we were broadly talking about liaisons and sort of them getting some background before they come to talk with us, but generally, and Ralph can jump in at any time because he's got probably the most experience of anybody on the committee, but we do look at all of the requests that come before us, and we do pick them apart with a fine tooth comb, and especially some of the more complex ones. There's a lot of Ralph on IT, for example. We don't just look at the individual items in a vacuum. We always ask questions about the overall plan for IT, in the infrastructure of the town and the maintenance of that infrastructure of the town. So we do have to get in to the weeds to make sure that we're going to put, we're going to recommend it for the town to acquire it. But it's all based on information that's made available to us. And a lot of that information doesn't come to us, as you know, immediately. It comes from some of the questions that are put forth, and we fill in those blanks.
Right.
Well, I'll add my thoughts about one of the reasons to bring this whole issue up is that at one time we were constrained by not having a sufficient amount of money to fund all the capital projects that came before us. That to some degree, and it may not be true today, but to some degree, it became less a problem of funding because we had enough funding after we passed the special purpose stabilization funds. And why we had more funding is that the capital stabilization fund still had its additional roughly $2 million a year. But what was removed from that capital stabilization fund was about $300,000 for roads and sidewalks, and about estimating another $500,000 for external repairs of the school. So we ended up with an $800,000 sort of bonus, basically, what happened. What began to concern me was that it was possible to approve every item without necessarily that deep dive, if necessary, if we wanted to. And so it has changed a little bit now with the most recent numbers. If we have 2.5 million of requests, and only we've got a couple of million we want to spend, so there is some constraint. But prior to the stabilization capitalization funds, the new ones, we were constrained by money. By being constrained by money, it made us very detailed about what, in fact, we would actually approve or not approve. So that sort of backs up, I think, what Rob is saying, that we do, and also you, Susan, say that we do want to back up whatever we believe in by detailed examination of each of these requests. In that connection, too, I felt that we had, but don't use, and I know we use a different document, but we have a document which I think was in the folder. I think it's called the Capital Improvement Plan Funding Request Form. And I know that Michelle has a view on that, but it was very detailed because it asked a lot of questions and allowed us to ask questions by at least looking at a cheat sheet and say, okay, what are the questions we ought to be asking? Are we forgetting something here? But we are not using that. And also in some past years, not many, but several past years, we really did a prioritization matrix of some sort, where we tried to weight the value of the various proposals, in which I would say we ought to be doing. So I had two thoughts out of all of that, which was, in spite of whether or not we have enough money or too much money this year or future years. The right thing to do is make sure we understand what are we asking in verbally from each of the departments so that we get a very complete answer against whatever the right document is, whether the one we're using now, whether the one we always did use is the right one. We ought to have a document that gives us those first questions. And second is we ought to have a way to prioritize the answers once we get them. So that's where I'm coming from. Trying to put more discipline into the whole structure so that it's a little easier at the end of it. We can say, this is why we didn't approve this project or did approve this other project. So
Yeah, so
And
I think Rob did-
sorry,
okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead, Susan.
No, no, no. I want to hear what you have to say first.
Okay. I was just saying that I had the impression that this was a circulation of best practices in different towns and different committees. And I found it very helpful. And if it's a model for best practices, then we need to incorporate it in some way.
Yeah, I think the Hingham one, Chris, is probably like the upper echelon of best practices, but they also have a capital budget management tool that they use. So,
Right.
We don't have that at our disposal.
Right.
But there was a lot of things in there that I thought was enlightening on the way they go about things. And the Yarmouth plan does a lot of what Ralph is talking about. They have a whole process of how do we, you're using the word rate, but how do we evaluate these proposals? Like, how do we like to evaluate the proposals? I don't believe in theirs. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly. I don't believe they had a numeric value to all the different ways that they look at things, but they, as a practice, that's the framework. When they look at one, they go through those different perspectives to determine whether the project should be considered or not for funding. So I definitely want to get to that part, but there were a couple things that were in the document that we first opened up here that I wanted to just bring up that jumped out at me. In the first bullet, it says that the committee's dedicated to accomplishing review, plan, and coordinate capital improvements. And I don't really think we coordinate capital improvements. I see that as
Put this up on the screen.
actuating them.
Sorry.
I wondered,
Can
Susan,
you
when
put the, sorry.
she's doing that, I think.
I just wanted to put the language up on the screen
Yeah,
that you were
I can do
talking
that.
about. So
Share window. So, can you see it?
yes,
Yeah, so when I
Perfect.
was reading coordinate and what I thought in my head, and maybe I'm wrong, was more around like if if one department is asking for X and the other department is asking for Y, and we can either, share an asset or, if there's a way that we can make it more streamlined or procure it and it'll be cheaper. That's what I kind of thought the coordination was like coordinating it between the departments so they're not just siloed requests. But maybe I'm wrong.
Well, I felt that they were talking about a single item there because later in the sentence it says an organized replacement acquisition and disposition schedule. I thought it meant like item by item, but I still think coordinate is just sort of a strange word.
Yeah.
So that was a word that I thought we could probably come up with a replacement term that was more,
Mhm.
explaining what we really do. And then down below, it says that we establish a 10-year capital expenditure forecast, but we don't do that independently. So it should probably be like in conjunction with town departments or something to that effect.
I also, the last couple of bullets that minimize and manage the risk of being over budget and undervalued, and then audit capital expenditures funded by town meeting to ensure benefits are realized. I mean, I wonder if we should, after, the cycle after the annual town meeting, if we should think about what are the projects that we approved that we're going to want someone to come back and tell us what progress is. Like, I know we're doing that with town hall. That's a really big item. But, like, what are the other items that we want to get some feedback on, for instance?
Well, again, Ralph probably remembers this, but we used to, when the exercise where we go and we look for, funds that weren't used and we reclaim them back into the fund. We used to actually talk about the project a little bit in conjunction with that, but it just sort of went away during the years where we were just so absorbed in large projects like the other town hall proposals. But yeah, I mean, there is benefit to doing that for sure. Otherwise, we just get into a cycle where, oh, well, this is what we've always bought, or, we've always funded this every year kind of thing, whether or not it's really, providing the benefit we assumed it was going to provide based on what we were told. We
Yeah.
don't follow up on that.
And the other thing that's not in here, I don't think, which is maybe a reflection that the funds were so constrained for such a long time, is making sure that the town is actually investing in its assets and sustaining them. I mean, I think we saw with town hall and even with the police station, like there's been no money put into these assets, and therefore they're in a really sorry state. And we should really promote that the town takes care of the assets that it has. So we don't get into the situation where, we're in right now with the town hall and like with the police station.
So maybe in that first bullet we add, because they're talking about a systematic, organized replacement, acquisition, and disposition schedule, but you're also talking about maintenance.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
let me jump in and say one of the things that makes it difficult about town things is that you need an advocate for things. That the way the
Yeah.
capital budget committee works is that there is an advocate. And I don't think that the town was advocating for these, for specifically for certainly not the renovation of existing town hall. They certainly were not advocating for that. And although there was advocating for renewal of the bays in the fire department on Elm Street, there was no real advocacy for anything else really there. So it is an advocacy problem as much as anything. So you do depend on people who are looking out for the capital, and we as a group, I don't think are really, and maybe we should, but are not looking out to see whether or not the capital in the town is properly either maintained or replaced. I don't think we do that. We wait for the advocacy. So there may be a need to do something a little bit better about our own being more proactive in what we try to look for. So
I can envision like when, departments come to us with their budgets, we can ask them questions about like what is like failing, or are there constraints, or ask them those questions a little bit outside of the box, not just about what they're presenting to us, and try to elicit if there's some things like going wrong or
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah. Well, the other way is also to get a full inventory of the capital of the town, which I don't think we really have. And so in the absence of a true list of the capital, it's a little hard to ask all the right questions, which maybe it would be helpful to have. So I think some of the other towns that Susan has provided information on do actually have very, very significant capital asset programs. So, and we don't.
Right, and even in the Hingham one, in their warrant, they even have a whole section where they explain all that before they even get to the articles. They explain sort of the financial position of the town in terms of its debt and its ability to fund the capital projects that are going to be discussed in the articles. So we could go a long way if we had, a tool. Right, we do have all the information. It's just not in one easy way. One presentation, it's multiple spreadsheets, which Katie has done a pretty good job of accumulating many of them, but the story around them isn't defined.
Yeah. So I have another question which kind of relates to what Rob brought up at the beginning about the details, and it relates more to the enterprise funds, in particular water and sewer, and even the sidewalks, and the fact that they also have committees looking in detail at that. So they're kind of recommending to us and then we recommend to the town. Is that what happens? And how much stock do we put in what they say? And I'm a little bit fuzzy about those relationships.
Right. Well, we don't have a vote on that. We don't vote on it, but we hear it. We used to hear about the roads all the time because the funds would come from Capital Budget Committee in
Mhm.
conjunction with some state funds. But now they don't come from capital budget anymore, but we like to listen to the discussion on the roads because sometimes we'll hear about other things that are gonna be happening that would involve tearing up a road that we're gonna be replacing, and we wanna make sure that we're all on the same page and planning around it, but we don't vote on them specifically. And the
But I
same
felt
thing-
like at the special town meeting, there were some things that came through the warrant for like the water, for instance.
Yeah, they're usually in the same article with us, but they're separated from the capital projects. Like the capital projects were in one box, and then the enterprise funds were in a second one.
Okay.
I guess
So
the way to
we're-
look at it also, Kathy, is that we would make sure the enterprise, generally, we will make sure the enterprise funds have adequate income and or reserves to actually cover their expenses. Fundamentally, that's what we do. Roads and sidewalks is a little different. That's a new committee that was proposed about 3 years ago. In general, we take their recommendation, which often comes directly actually from Brian Joyce, as it turns out, with the input of that committee. That's one worth debating because there may be some differences we might have as just as citizens about which are the right roads or which are the right sidewalks we ought to be actually repairing. So that gives us more latitude in that particular category of capital. So, but we don't have a lot of latitude in the enterprise ones, as it turns out. So,
Right. But a good question. So this is the whole section about, how, where the funds come from that we utilize. And I think this is the point that, everybody was making, that this is pretty generic language. It doesn't really tell you a whole heck of a lot.
It's very generic.
Yeah. And this goes to Ralph's point that we hear what they bring before us. And in most cases, when you're looking at a piece of equipment, for example, it's very different than when you're looking at a project or a decision to make a big investment in doing something different in the town. So for example, Ralph, you were talking about you were mentioning the town hall project, for example, coming to us with just immediately the thought was we got to knock down the building and start over again. Versus, coming with more of a conversation. It's a little bit backward. We ended up having the conversations. After we spent a lot of money on evaluating things from a single direction.
unfortunately, we don't have a huge impact on things that the town really wants to do. We can have an opinion, as it turns out, but if the town has decided it wants to build a new building, and this committee may think it isn't the right thing to do or the right amount of money or whatever it is, we probably don't have a lot of impact, as it turns out. The experience I think we've all had is that you'll find the select board and the advisory board will be on board, and you'll find the capital budget committee won't be. And what happens is the town meeting makes the decision. So that's kind of the way it goes. So the big projects are the difficult ones, as I see it. That's why I'm sort of hammering away on making sure that whatever it is that is recommended for the police station, that in fact every I is dotted, every T is crossed. Otherwise, I've been through too many of these defeats in the past to realize that in the absence of understanding the way the public is going to look at this, it will be, again, a very discouraging time for all of us. So
Yeah. I don't really see too much. I mean, we are a volunteer committee, so I mean, I don't know how we could get involved in, in the really early stages of everything that the town then brings before us. But Ralph's right. We have often had that circumstance where when it gets to us, we have a lot more questions and we're not comfortable with the project, but the town has already spent a considerable amount of money on it.
I mean, I think that maybe the way we're doing public safety now and the way we're doing long-term planning now, where we have the liaison sitting on the committee that's discussing these big projects, and every time the capital budget committee meets is bringing things back and forward. I certainly reminded the working group, like, you're going to need to get the capital budget committee on board with this because this is going to be on the warrant and you want them on board. And similar with the school projects, I would think you would want somebody from the capital budget committee, the liaison, to be at the beginning of those discussions and be involved.
Yeah, we do end up hearing the school, the stabilization fund conversations. We definitely do hear those. And I guess we probably had a little bit of a lead on those because those projects have been on our radar on the 10-year plan for a long time, but we had no way of even considering doing them.
But if there's a big project, the high school, middle school project,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's worthwhile saying, what we want somebody from CBC on that committee from the start.
Mm-hmm.
there is, and I don't want to make any, sort of rash statements about it all, but in a way, we need to be a little aloof.
Yeah.
Partly because you don't want to have a potential conflict of interest. And I know that it's a little hard for people, because you're contributing and trying to help. But it is risky for anyone who's on, for example, certainly on a school issue, to take a position which is different than what that consensus might be on that committee, on that school building committee. So there's a real risks for the capital budget committee, for the individual who, in fact, does become a liaison to those committees. So
Right.
We've really tried, for the most part, at least I thought we had tried to stay a little aloof. Now, Sam originally was part of the buildings, or the new town hall in a couple of instances, but he was very cautious about his advocacy or even participation at that time, and would always reflect the view of the committee itself, not his own personal view, as I saw it.
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation, an email conversation with Ellen about this, and it's actually on the state's website how committee members are, what their limitations are when they're on these outside committees. And you hit the nail on the head, Ralph, in that you are really an individual on the committee. You're acting as an individual and not the voice of the larger committee, the capital budget committee that you are on. And I asked that they put that statement right from the Massachusetts website onto the documentation that's being posted by you guys, so everybody knows when they read anything on those documents that it is the voice of individual residents and not people in their roles on committees. So, okay. If anybody has anything else that they, I'm going to take a shot at improving some of the language in here, but if anyone else has anything that they would particularly like addressed, just send across your thoughts and we can make some modifications. Obviously, then we can date it. It's things, 8 years old. It needs to be updated and reposted on the town website.
The only other two documents I think probably need to be updated might be what in fact information verbally we're supposed to get from the committees, from each of the town departments. That's one
Yeah,
document. We have one, and maybe that one needs to be updated if it's not the right one. And I do think to some degree, whatever questions are asked of the departments and they write and they give their answers to, it would be wise if in fact we were able to relate those to any prioritization if we end up doing prioritization, so that there's a relationship between what you get and how you're going to make the decisions. So those
Yeah.
documents need to be coordinated a bit better than they are now, if in fact we intend to prioritize things. So
Well, let's just quickly look at how to that up on the screen. So this is the document that we have today, and you've probably noticed whenever we get requests from people, they literally fill out this section right here, and the rest of it is pretty much blank. You may also notice these numbers here that came from at the time that we updated this sheet. We tried to come up with some kind of a mathematical way of rating the transactions, but no one ever filled out any of the information to make it adequate to use. And this is the form as it existed in 2017. So again, the beginning of the form would easily get filled out. But then down here, we'd start asking them, to your comment, Kathy, a little bit about where do they see their capital costs over the next 10 years, which is now part of the 10-year capital plan. And then we would ask about, their maintenance plan and the cost of maintaining it over a certain number of years, and like, when's the time that something becomes more obsolete or more expensive to maintain than to just replace with a newer version. And then these were the questions back then. Did anybody take a look at this at all and have any comments as to the different ways that the questions are asked today versus back then? Because it is kind of
I mean, what I would say is, just from a formatting standpoint, this Excel form is really difficult, whereas the older form
yeah.
looks a little bit nicer. Like, it would be great if we could have somebody do the form as like maybe a PDF where you can actually fill it out, versus this Excel, which like
Yeah.
it's got all sorts of like, you can see it right now. You can see like weird,
Yeah,
yeah,
cells that don't function properly. Yeah.
and like things that don't wrap, so you have to kind of click into it to read what the whole comment is.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I noticed between the two is this form is our form today is very directed to the way finance people think, right?
Mm.
And this one is more to the way like different department people might think about things. It's harder to rate these answers, but we never get any answers on the one we have today.
So can I just weigh in for 1 second?
Yeah.
So the reason we continue to change the forms is I think we keep trying to change the form so we get more information from the department heads. But every time we change the form, we add additional questions. And when the department heads have several requests, they do not want to fill out 5 different forms for 5 different requests that have 10 different questions. So that's how I think
Right.
the liaison appointments came out about,
Yeah.
that you would sit with the department heads and you'd fill out this information. I love the idea of a fillable PDF. I think that's great. I just think we have to get to the correct questions that are concise enough that the department heads can fill maybe 3 or 4 questions out and submit it.
Yeah, I think that's what we're working towards, Michelle, but you have to agree, right now, this form, nobody fills out the past
Oh, I
the
agree.
basic
I completely
information.
agree. And
It's
this is
always
probably the
blank,
5th
and
iteration since I've
Sometimes they fill out the last one, but they put the same thing they put in the box at the beginning. They just repeat it again at the end.
agreed.
So it doesn't really provide, in its current state, a lot of value. So I think what we need to do is have a form that's more inclined, like this one here, a lot of questions, too many questions, but questions that are more, directed in a way that a non-finance person would answer them, and then we have to relate those answers into some kind of evaluation criteria that we're comfortable working with. So we had gone through an exercise years ago. We used the Trent form that I had sent out to everybody as our basis for coming up with a way of measuring and comparing the different forms. I keep losing that folder. Every time I go back out, I lose it. Sorry about that. Oh, here it is. Come on, Susan. Where'd it go? Shared. Can we show version? So we use this prioritization matrix as a basis for coming up with the numbering system that you see here on the other side. So this is how they did it. And they have these weights. They actually have weighting on their form. And then I also provided to you guys Yarmouth, because Yarmouth also has a process that they use. Let me get to it. They go through their whole capital planning and everything. And then at the very end here, they talk about the program and how they evaluate. Okay, so here are some of the questions that they ask. And then where's that part about rating? Sorry. Oh, here it is. So that you submit it, and then they have a rating process. They go through a table like this to determine. One, to go through them and get the right questions answers, but two, to also figure out like where does this land in relationship to all the other projects that are in front of us. Where does it land? And Michelle had expressed a concern about, small projects sort of, just falling by the wayside, but because they don't seem to have the same importance level. And I think that's true when you look at the rating system in this program, because maybe there isn't a risk of not, a health and safety risk associated with not getting something like a new computer at the library. But the value proposition is different, for getting a new computer at the library. So these guys don't use numbering. They just basically, through the conversations and the discussions that they have, then they say they prioritize them. So,
Right.
Does it benefit the community? Yeah. Does new computer at the library benefit the community? Yeah. Is someone going to lose their life if we don't have a computer at the library? No, but it's a benefit to the community. So you can see how you can still rise to the point where you're going to be a project that's considered to be one that will be funded, even if you don't fit this like very copacetic financial view of looking at the project.
I mean, they can use this to get a rating, right, from 0 to 4, because
Yeah, but it's
they've
not
got like 70 and 30%, 70% for significance, 30% for readiness.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really does argue for us
We were
to,
trying to put a number on it, like just
Yeah.
have the thing do the math, like, oh,
Yeah.
take this, it gets this number, and that goes into the matrix and it calculates it out. But we started out, Ralph, I remember in our sessions, we started talking very much on the same kind of terminology, like essential,
yeah, that's right.
and all that kind of stuff. But then we tried to apply a number to it.
Yeah. What it really says is we need to take a look at, well, both the Yarmouth example, our own examples, the Trent Hills example, and see if we can come up with something that really works for everyone. There are good examples when we use the original format, the one that we now no longer use. The one that I had pulled up recently was one that was done by Bob Sylvia for I guess, a fire engine, or maybe it was it might have been a cot. I'm not sure which. But anyway, he had when you read it in all of the verbiage, you said, I really understand this. He tended to do a very, very good job. And although I understand fully what Michelle is saying about making it's not rational to do that for every kind of project. In some of these projects, it really does deserve a very thorough discussion, both for our benefit, but more than anybody is for their benefit. So they understand why they're doing what they're doing. So we don't get caught in this. We do this same thing, like we buy 2 cars every year, or we buy a new fire engine every 25 years. I mean, we don't, with no thought. So it's trying to force people to think very seriously about why are they making the decisions they are to buy things. So
Yeah, so if you look up above here, this is what the committee expects the town department to provide. And not every one of these line items is applicable. It depends on the project, but this is what they're anticipating, they're looking for. And what this is how we take that material and evaluate it.
right.
Can you put that up on the screen, Susan?
It's not on the screen?
No.
Am I not sharing?
Yeah, it is.
It
It is on the
there.
screen.
It's just
Okay, I've got my thing on gallery view and I don't get it.
okay.
On that view?
Okay, I'll find it. Sorry.
But this is on the Yarmouth. It's on the Yarmouth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm on the Yarmouth document because I just found it very easy to
Right,
read.
yeah.
It's very well laid
It's very
out.
well done. Yeah. I'm just arguing to do something like that, and if not this year, then for future years. So we get a very nice way of looking at these and getting the best information possible to make a decision. So
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways we intuitively are doing these things, but it's a good practice to have it formalized. But we kind of do it, like projects aren't ready, they fall off the list, you know. So let's look at the checklist and see, Michelle, I know that you have a lot of comments on, you know, overwhelming the departments, but so they use a software tool called Easy Portal, so just ignore the references to that. But basically, you know, if you're doing a project, you have to show the scope, the plans, the estimates. And again, we're not asking that I don't think we're asking, you guys can tell me otherwise. We're not asking them to write a report about it all. We're just saying, make sure that you have the support. Like, you know, tell us what the project is. And then if your support is photos and, you know, estimates from builders and different things, but as long as you can put it out in a way that we can make it all fit together and we understand what the project is about, I don't think we're asking that they write like a whole report up.
I came away from this exercise with a newfound respect for the town of Falmouth. I thought it was an excellent document.
It
was
is.
it Falmouth or Yarmouth?
Yarmouth.
Yarmouth.
Okay.
Sorry.
Not a bit.
Very complete, very thoughtful, and I don't know, Susan, what do you think? I mean, anything to be added or subtracted or?
Well, that's what we're trying to get at. Because you know, we're trying to accomplish a couple things. One, we're trying to make it more standard and easier for the departments to communicate what they want. Two, we're trying to come up with a better way for us to evaluate. You know, like I said, we intuitively do it, but it would be great if we had a more formal way of evaluating the way that we do things.
so one thing that comes up in this is I haven't seen any of the ones that are really good or really bad and that we've actually filled out or have reviewed. Are those available? Could we look at those to get a better idea of why certain ones are quite good and certain ones suck?
That's a good question.
Yes,
Rob.
we can definitely show you some. I know that Katie had shared with you that the police packet is generally very well put together in terms of information. But again, we can't just blame the departments because in a lot of cases it's been our way of collecting the information. Our form has not been great. We've been asking them questions about, you know, what's the payback cycle if we were to buy this this item, and that's why I'm saying to you that it's very much of like the way a finance person thinks, and not necessarily somebody operationally in a department
Well,
is
from my
thinking.
standpoint, it's hard to look at these without looking into specific cases. So that's really what I'm saying here. You've got, each of these have advantages, each has disadvantages. So let's look at ones that are actually work for us and ones that don't, and maybe that will make it easier. That's all.
And just one other thought as we review this Yarmouth proposal. Has anyone reached out to someone in Yarmouth to see if it's actually working for them? Because someone could look at ours and say, wow, they really have a great system. And then if they talk to
Right.
us, we're like, oh, we fall a little flat. So I'm just wondering if maybe reaching out to someone
Right,
may be beneficial.
right.
Yeah, we definitely could. I mean,
Yeah.
this was just put out in a year ago in October. But when I read it, Michelle, especially this section, it does seem very much like the things we try to go through when we look at these projects. It's the questions we try to ask. We ask about operational costs, what have you experienced in the past? What have been your repair costs? It's just putting it in writing. And I think it's pretty great that they're able to come up with their questions are, and again, it's not like answer this question one by one. It's just like be prepared to discuss these things. And if you do have a project schedule, then that's part of what you should present. Like Nick last year when he was talking about the library and the bricks that what do you call it, repointing the bricks and things on the library. He showed us the plan for the next 3 years of those projects, which helps put it in perspective.
But
I
I think,
guess what I'm advocating for is less just having to write it all down, but have a little bit of a summary about what you're looking for, like they do now in the first few sentences of the form, sections of the form, and then just come prepared with the paperwork that's going to support the project. So maybe we don't have to write it in full sentences like this. Maybe it can be a simple checklist that, and they can tell, oh, that applies to me or doesn't apply to me. And then they can bring it in the form of charts, graphs, photos. Because they're doing that for you anyway, aren't they, Michelle?
Yeah, so if you'd like, we can come up with a draft form tomorrow that'll be just that. It's a summary of what they're asking for. And I'm not saying you have to use it this year, but maybe just something to think about. A summary of what they're asking for, and then just a checklist of A through, I don't know where it goes to, but A through K or whatever the last. A through M, and it is just a checklist. So these are the questions that are going to be asked. So make sure you have supporting documents that satisfies all of these requirements if they pertain to your project.
Right.
To get them thinking. We
Yeah.
can show them that this year. And maybe it'll be easier for them. I'm not sure. But we can at least make a draft form.
Yeah. Do you want to do that in conjunction with me? Or do you want to do it independently? I mean, I'm happy to work on it with you. There are a couple things that I didn't see on their form, like that question about grants, or I didn't see a question like that.
So if you'd
I'm
like,
sure
I
that's-
can start the form with the information we have here. And then if you'd like to send me more questions or provide feedback on the form, I'm happy to implement whatever.
Well, I'm just saying maybe the language is a little.
Yeah. I
Well,
see H is about outside funding, so that must be grants, but it should probably it
Doesn't
should
say
use
that.
the word grant in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it problematic to change the form at this point? Now that the process has already started?
I wouldn't think so, only because maybe I'm speaking out of turn, Michelle, but they don't fill it out.
Yeah.
They don't.
Yeah,
They don't.
okay. All right.
Some do, very few.
But they try, but
Yeah.
honestly, when I see one really filled out, I really just see the same explanation being
In
cut
all of
paste
it.
into
Yeah.
every single box.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against them. It's not an easy form to fill out.
So
But I
one thing
guess
I worry, one,
the question for our group is, do you guys think if people come to us with a quick like synopsis, like an executive summary of what it is they want to do, and then they are prepared to present in whatever format they have, uh, materials that answer the questions that pertain to them in this list and however we modify it, would that be enough for us to evaluate projects?
I think as mandatory, and this probably is mandatory, is that 10-year plan and then whatever they have in terms of inventory, be it rolling stock or, I mean, as we said, we don't really have an inventory of all the assets, but whatever they have would be great.
Yeah, so so you're saying that the way this form had a little bit about your capital, like your capital plan. So Michelle, we were talking about this when you weren't on the phone. It used to sit on the form here that they'd fill that out, but
I think the way
we
they do it
get
now
the
in
plan
Excel
from
makes more
Michelle.
sense.
We get the plan from Michelle, and
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with us always just referring back to that one managed document than having to have them spell it out. But the thing about operational costs,
Mm-hmm.
I keep losing the documents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do-
operational costs, that's on here.
Mm-hmm.
The hard thing, and I don't know whether what you're doing or what we're suggesting will work, is, for example, when you talk about the police department, our own these are concrete examples. You talk about the police department and 2 vehicles per year. How
Mhm.
would you evaluate whether or not that would you have out of these questions and the answer to the kinds of questions you would ask, which relate to whether or not that in fact is what we really need? In other words, it's a very subtle. Um, it's much more complex than a simple set of questions and answers. It really has to do with kind of the depth of understanding of the way, for example, police cruisers are kept or not kept or whatever it is. And there was it's when you lay real examples against any of these documents, the question is, do you get enough out of this to actually ask the questions, or are they answered by virtue of having looked at all of the questions being raised and answered it verbally or otherwise? So I mean,
Yeah,
there's
well, I think that this isn't perfect, Ralph. That's what we're talking about,
yeah.
modifying it to a degree. But yeah, it doesn't. I don't see a question in here that talks about reoccurring projects or programs like you're talking about, where like refreshment programs, I guess, maybe the best word for it, or refresh assets over a period of time. But that certainly can be in here. So if you're the police department and you have a rolling stock refresh program, then that's something you would want to be prepared to bring, to the meeting.
Well, would any of these questions elicit that kind of response?
I see some that are close but not quite, because it talks here about like a project schedule and sequences of things and happening, but that's more towards a larger project. But we'll certainly augment it. I guess I think these are good starting points for questions. There's certainly going to be a few more that I think when we work this out, Michelle, we'll either say, oh, we should really add that one in. We already talked about grants not being explicitly stated in here, and we add them in. But Katie, I think at the beginning of this year was said on numerous occasions that anybody who has any kind of equipment should have a rolling stock, schedule. And I think we started to collect them. She collected one from DPW. We got one from fire. We got one from police. And that should just become part of their packet. Every time they come before us, they bring it.
And so if it's a lease liability, is it just the lease liability and there's no other questions to answer? Like, would they check lease liability and that
Well, I
alleviates
think with
them
the
from
leases,
answering?
with the leases, what's most important will probably be somewhat reflected in the 10-year plan anyway. It's like, well, what year are we in? You know, of the lease, what year are we in? You know, how many payments remain? Is there a bullet at the end? You know, all the basic stuff. Because you kind of agree to the terms of the lease the first time that you agree to fund it. You know, and they do all have fiscal funding out clauses because all municipal leases do, but we're kind of agreeing to the program when we do that first year. But again, that's reflected in the 10-year plan. When we have lease payments, they're streamed out.
Well, one of the things that came up in the discussion the last time, I think, was about the fire truck to be specifically, and the comment was made that I don't know whether that virtually, or at least the way I heard it, was that virtually every fire truck that's purchased from little towns, anyways, um, all of the optional equipment is always purchased on it. And so the question is, you know, that's probably pretty expensive, and probably a lot of those options we never use. And so, which ones of these would get at that, or would force them into saying, yeah, we looked at those and we decided that option 35 through 69 we really don't use and would never use, and so we don't have those. You know, as opposed to just saying, yeah, it's our year for a new one. We always buy it, and we always buy it with all the options on it. That's all.
Well, I guess we have to have enough questions that we are hitting these basic concerns, but we can't ask them all specifically. They have to be more like a generic question. You can't say, I don't know. I find it hard to have every single question on this form. It's just,
Yeah.
you're trying to stimulate conversation, or you know, you're trying to get them to bring the materials that will help us ask the right questions. And what we find often with most of the time when we ask questions, they usually know the answers to what we're asking. They just didn't bring the documents and things that substantiate the answer or the question. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to bring those things with them. And again, I'm not saying that this is a perfect document. We can wordsmith it to the way that we are getting the questions or the pieces that we're most interested in getting provided.
I guess sort of leveraging off what Rob is saying is that I guess what we're really looking for is the discipline within each department when they're making a major purchase, that they have what they're buying, they know in detail. In other words, they're not just taking the most recent proposal from a consultant and just using it as is, but they understand fully the entire every element of their quotes that in fact makes sense to them. And I do think, in fact, we don't understand that people are looking at these quotes they're getting from the outside. And most of the things we see are actually quotes from external sources. Very rarely are they done in-house, as it turns out. But anyway, that those quotes, in fact, have been examined carefully by the department. So we're looking for that kind of detail. That we want to know they're looking at it. So.
Yeah. Which is why I want to make sure that they provide those quotes to us. Otherwise, we don't have the materials to even begin asking the questions. We can't look at the quotes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you're right, Rob. I mean, there is a propensity, a natural propensity for people to just do what they've always done, you know, go back and buy the thing that they know or are familiar with. And we have pushed back in the past as a committee. We pushed back pretty hard on the salt shed That took 3 years for us to all come to a conclusion that we all thought was the right one. And I don't think it was it was a collective process. But yeah, we were gonna do what we recognized we had before. Very similar structure. We ended up going with the Quonset hut structure. That took us a while to get there through good conversations. So, all right, I'm willing to work on this with you, Michelle. If you want to take hack number 1 at it.
I'll take a first pass at it and send it over.
Okay.
So one thing I will say is when I look at this list and then I look at their rating table, we should probably make sure that how the information we use to rate it is information that is in this list. You know what I mean? Like a little comparison of the two. And I like this kind of simple rating table, but sometimes simple rating tables actually, usually it's the more complicated rating tables that give you the answers that make no sense. And the simple ones usually give you a better answer. But, it's whenever we use something like this for the first time, I think we also need to give ourselves an out that, if something comes out with a really strange number, we should have a chat about it and whether this actually makes sense or not. Because sometimes these tables and priority matrices can give you kind of skewed priorities.
That can happen, but again, it's a framework, but then you
Yeah.
just it's probably going to be directive 80% of the time, and then the other 20 is where the human beings have to have a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. I think that might be an important thing to state when we talk, if we were ever to put this on our committee site, for instance, it would be important to state that this is directive, not
Yeah.
definitive.
Right. They may even say that in theirs. I didn't read the paragraph.
Yeah, they might, yeah.
Yeah, create a uniform method to rate projects. Let's see if they have it out. Circumstances cannot account for every contingency.
Mm.
So that, yeah, they're finding a way to say that, yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna probably have some conversations around it. But if anything, other than providing a framework to help us make decisions, it just also helps you make sure that you're having the full conversations.
Yeah.
Because how can you look at something as the highest priority if you didn't really look at things that are listed in these boxes, for example? If I pick that one. We have to look at the plans and all the things that are mentioned here in order to even begin the process of rating. If you don't have them, you can't do it. So
Mm.
Yeah, so let's do that, Michelle. Let's try to come up with a simpler way for them to present.
Okay, sounds good.
And to your point, Rob, I can think about when we're offline a couple of projects that I think were well described in their forms, and then other ones that took a lot more effort to get to the real story about the request,
Thank you.
and send them over. Okay, so what else do we have? Agenda. I'm going to close these up for now. The agenda. Okay, you don't want to open? That's weird. Must be open and I don't know it. Here it is. All right, so we're just going to talk a little bit about the liaison reassignments. But before I do that, I will tell you that tomorrow at the select board meeting, they're going to discuss, soliciting parties for to fill our, to get people to apply to fulfill our open position. I've already spoken to one individual who I know is applying. And I think Ralph was going to reach out to somebody. I don't know if you had any success, Ralph, on reaching out.
Yeah, I will know probably either tomorrow or Wednesday whether she's interested or not. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And then, the select boards may or may not stimulate other people, but the goal is to have a new person on our committee by December 1st, so that we can, get to the work at hand. So we can, Michelle, next meeting, I think you had initially thought rec and where did that document.
Do we say fire?
Rec, fire, and elder affairs if they came up with anything, but I don't believe they have anything for us.
Okay. So we could focus on liaisons getting started there. I know that the schools had only put out one date for a meeting. But maybe you'll know more, Michelle, after you meet with them.
Well, yeah, well, the schools, based on the calendar, are supposed to receive final approval from the school committee on Wednesday evening for their
Mhm.
capital requests.
Okay,
But I think, as we spoke last time, I think they're definitely a two meeting.
yeah. So I'm on the schools as a liaison, but I was with Katie. I guess I can just do that on my own for now. I don't have the list of the assignments in front of me, but do you guys remember who you were assigned to? Or should I bring up the list? Which I can, but I closed the window. I have to reopen. Yeah, no, that's 2024. That's an old one. I don't know where Katie put them.
Oh, I've got them from the October 27th minutes. Is that right?
Yep, that would be correct.
So do you want to know the ones that Katie was on? Is that, or I can just read them off if
Yeah,
that helps.
if you just read them off.
Yeah, so schools was Katie and Susan. Police fire is myself and Chris.
Mhm.
IT is Ralph and Susan. Facilities was just Katie, but I think we said that there wasn't going to be a ton from facilities because of the town hall project.
We don't have any. So,
Okay.
yep.
So that's fine.
DPW is Ralph and Chris. I am the library as well as elder affairs. Rob was the harbor. Town, I just have Michelle to provide updates on town hall renovations.
Yeah.
Water sewer,
Yeah, water sewer.
water sewers, Rob and Susan. I'm public safety working group, and we didn't assign anybody to rec. So Katie looks like really just facilities and schools, and we don't need anyone to cover facilities
Okay,
unless we want them to come and we just want to talk about what they're going to be doing next year.
I think that's actually a good idea, Kathy, and I think it's a good idea for recreation as well, since we just put a huge amount of money into infrastructure in the recreation department. I think it'd be beneficial to hear about their 10-year plan as it relates to all the projects that we just completed. So I think that's a good idea.
okay. But they probably don't
We can test out
require
our new
that
forms
anybody-
for them.
Probably doesn't require that we talk to them, have a liaison speak to them in advance. They're just gonna come give us like a state of the union. Is that how you see it, Michelle?
I do, unless
Okay.
Kathy sees it a different way.
No, I think that would be great using the 10-year plan as like a tool to have a discussion with them about
Okay.
what's going on.
So tomorrow with schools, Michelle, is that like a town only activity? Or do you think it's worthwhile that I go to it or?
I think it's just myself and Sarah. We're also gonna tackle the FY27 budget at the same time.
Okay,
Um,
so probably wait till the other meeting,
yeah, I would probably wait till the next,
prior to the next,
yeah.
to the meeting that they already have in the calendar with Katie and I. And who knows by then, maybe, we'll know who the other person's gonna be unless somebody on this committee wants to step into that slot with Katie, where Katie was. Or we'll leave it open for whoever joins the committee.
I'm pretty hopeful there'll be several applicants. I mean, we've had a lot of interest over the past few weeks.
Mhm.
So I think we may get some great candidates.
Good, good to hear. All right, so our next meeting is December 1st, and so prior to that meeting, we'll recycle out what we're gonna work on with respect to the forms that we talked about. And then are we going to approach rec and elder affairs? Well, elder affairs, you said didn't have anything. Rec and fire for that meeting?
I mean, if we're getting rec to come and share their 10-year plan, we probably should get elder affairs too as well. Although I know there's someone new in that position, so they might need a bit more time.
Yeah. I can't.
Maybe if they don't have any requests, they can share their 10-year plan once we're done with the cycle of hearing
Yeah.
the requests that we have in front of us.
I agree with that too, so.
Yeah, that's a good idea. But
So
let them know that they will
fire
be,
and-
we will be talking to them.
Yes.
Should we
Yeah.
should we include Harbor in that because they've sort of been pushed out?
Yes, I think
But
all
it-
departments should
All
be included so we
departments
can
that
get a
don't have-
baseline this year for the
Mhm.
10.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. So we've already heard police.
Yeah.
Who
And
else
for
have we
fire,
talked
do we want to wait and have them fill out this new form or just have them use the forms that they've already filled out?
I can't. I don't know. What do you think, Michelle?
I think maybe allow them to use the forms they've already filled out, but let's
Mhm.
use the questions in the table to see how they relate to a large purchase versus one of a smaller purchase.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
All right, so who else do we want to put on that, on December 1st meeting then, out of this group? We already heard the library. They're not gonna have another one,
So maybe DPW?
DPW. I'm just bringing up the 10-year plan really quick here to see what we might be going over with them. Who's fire?
Wasn't it Public Works? I think you just passed it.
I did, Public Works.
There it is.
There it is. Oh, the sweeper. Catch basin. A variable message board. Oh, is that just like one of those?
Yeah,
up-
so the
out on
police,
side of the road
the
boards?
police have two now. The DPW doesn't have any.
Oh, and a John Deere tractor. Okay. All right, yeah, let's bring them on. Ralph, is there any chance you'd be able to chat with them before that?
Ralph, your mouth is moving, but we don't hear you.
Yeah, what I have to do, unfortunately, guys, I have to expand my screen substantially to read any of this. So at that point, I don't even
Oh.
have any, I don't even have the access to turn the volume on or off. So the question is, which question did you have? Right.
Oh, we were just saying maybe DPW can be on the December meeting. Presenting.
Yeah, am I on the DPW list? I don't think so.
Says Ralph
I
and
usually am, but I
Chris.
didn't know.
Don't try to get out of it, Ralph. Your name's on the list.
You're on the
Unfortunately. Okay, I'll do DPW. By what? For December 1st?
Yeah, they have 4 items here on their capital plan, so I'm
Okay, I'll do that.
expecting those will be the ones that they'll be bringing before us.
Okay, who else is on DPW? Just me?
No,
No, I think I'm on too,
it's
Ralph,
Ralph and
behind you.
Chris.
Okay, all right. We have to coordinate and pick a time to go over there.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right, good. So we'll have those 2 on the list. All right then. And we're gonna have minutes with that meeting. The minutes weren't ready for this meeting, so we'll have a set of minutes when we do that one. All right. So we discussed the next agenda. We don't have any minutes. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about? Nope. Okay. All right, Michelle, I'll be in touch with you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
Okay, excellent. All right, everyone.
Thanks,
Everyone have a
everyone.
Great holiday.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, wait. We're
Want to
supposed
move to adjourn?
adjourn. We have to move to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, roll call. Everybody?
Rob
doing it,
Kaysmeyer, aye.
Ardor Mitsarai.
Ralph,
Chris Peisch, hi.
Chris, Susan, I. All right, everyone. Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.
Good
Same
night.
to
you.
Same to you.
Thank you.